Time to continue my end of the year book series where I'm going to be having a bunch of top 10 books in different categories. I will link a playlist to all of those up in the cards. I have done my top 10 fantasy so far. And for each of the videos, I will have a link to bookshop.org. They are an online bookseller that will help support local bookstores with their profits, and if you do buy anything in that link in the description, I do get a small commission from that sale. So if you're curious about where to find my favorite books of the year, I will always have that in the description in each of these videos, and let's get into it. They're going to go from 10 to 1. Like the fantasy list, this was really hard for me to do. And what I noticed is that I am way harsher on my sci-fi reads than I am my fantasy. Like, I could have an amazing experience with a sci-fi book, but give it 4 stars. It's really weird. Like, a lot of these are 4 stars. It's not in order of ranking, it's more in order of impressions left on me and how much I still think about them. Sci-fi is such a mixed bag because I feel like what I want from the genre is very different than what I want from fantasy. At number 10, we have To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This was a novella I read this year for the BookTube SFF Awards. It is a really lovely story about discovery and traveling and science for the sake of science. You have this crew that are going to be going on this long journey to kind of study the ecosystems of different planets without leaving their own footprints. It's about the dynamics of this group. It's about what happens when they stop receiving word from Earth. It's really interesting, and I really liked it as a scientist while reading it. It gave me warm, fuzzy feelings, which is why it's my number 10. Number 9 is another novella I read for the BookTube SFF Award. I actually do have a video where I go through all those novellas, which were pretty much all hits for me. I'll have that in the cards for you as well. But this is How You Lose the Time War by 2 authors, Amal El-Mortar and Max Gladstone. And it is the most abstract writing I have ever read, and it should not have worked for me, but it did. It's about these 2 time-space agents who are on different parts of this time war, and as they go through time and space, they interact with each other and leave each other notes. And the story takes place in these notes. You don't really get a larger view of this time war or where they're from. You just get a really interesting view into this connection that these 2 people are forming. And I was very emotionally impacted by this, and whenever a story emotionally impacts me, it becomes a favorite. I really do want to reread it, even though it's completely out of my comfort zone. It's not a writing style that is very direct. It's very abstract and flowery, and the world building is very, you just have to go with it. Some things will not be explained as much as you'd want in, say, a sci-fi novel. This is a novella, and it's not about giving the world building all of this detail. It's about following this connection of these 2 people from 2 different worlds, and it was beautiful. Number 8 is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This is a translation. So originally the book came out in '94, but it recently was available in English, I think in 2019. I have talked about this in, I think, 4 book clubs now, or at least I talked about it a lot with Ryan. I talked about it a lot with some BookTube friends. I talked about it at book club. I have had a great time discussing this work. Now, it is a dystopian sci-fi story, but it's nothing like normal dystopian sci-fi. So don't think about 1984, don't think about Fahrenheit 451. It's not going to have that tension that those stories have. This has a more quiet tension. It's very hard to describe. You have our narrator, who is unnamed, who is a writer and lives on this island where things disappear in memory and actuality. And that happens in a very abstract way and very concrete ways. And it's about this community adapting. Our character is a very normal person in this abnormal scenario. And there is the memory police that will take people who don't forget. If you don't forget, the memory police will come for you. And you hear that and you'd think, oh, this is where 1984 vibes come in because that's how the book's marketed. But it's really not about the oppressor or the authoritarian regime. It's about these people and how they adapt. And it's beautiful, and there's a lot happening, and every time I discuss it, I love this story more and more. It's not that long. It is pretty literary, so this is more like a literary sci-fi read. So I wouldn't pick it up expecting it to be breezy, even though it is this short. And yeah, I've just had a great time reading it. I'm really glad that my boyfriend just decided to pick it up in the midst of this pandemic. Number 7 is Raven Stratagem. This is the second book in the Machinery's Empire series by Yoon Ha Lee. This is a space opera series that has stolen my heart in the weirdest ways. It is the weirdest space opera series. I will probably talk about it a bit more further on in the list, spoiler alert, but I have a world building video for the Machinery's Empire because I do find that it is aggressively world built. It is, you are just thrown in there. If you're someone who hates info dumps, don't worry, there are no info dumps. There is no help given to you. There is no glossary. You are left to piece things together yourself and go with the flow. And in the meantime, you have these hysterically wonderful characters. The reason why this one is where it is on the list is because I was a little jarred going into it because I wasn't with the characters I wanted to be with, but it was still really awesome. I still loved the world building, and I'm really excited to pick up Revenant Gun later on in December and read that with some friends. It's just been really imaginative science fiction with really great characters in this just amazing world. It's just insane. It's really all I can say. Number 6 on this list is Midnight Robber by Nalo Hopkinson. This is a really unique Caribbean-inspired science fiction. I have a review video for this. It is really interesting and really hard for me to recommend universally. It discusses a lot of hard, heavy themes, especially with our character Tantan, who goes from this really technologically advanced place to the parallel universe version of it that is low technology, and also has to deal with not the best parental figures, and I say that very lightly, but it's actually like they're the worst parents I've ever actually seen written, probably. And it's just about her interacting on this planet with these different species and trying to make it, trying to survive emotionally and physically. And another reason why it's hard for me to recommend universally is it is written in dialect. It's a combination of different Caribbean speech patterns, which is jarring at first, especially if you like have bad flashbacks from when you were forced to read like Huckleberry Finn or something. But it's actually really easy to read. I just read the first page or two out loud to help myself get the cadence. And once you have the cadence, it's really great because you're just being told this story. I love to be told a story. I'm very basic like that, and that's just the vibe it gives, and it's really unique. Like it gave me Avatar, like the Blue People Avatar movie vibes. Like the descriptions of some of the locations on this planet are just that vibrant. And so I really do recommend reading it if you want to challenge yourself with like a different world. It's a lot like the Machinery's Empire, where it's just like, it's not going to be an easy story, but it's really worth it. And that's why it made it onto my list. So now number 5, as I was talking about, is Nine Fox Gambit, the first book in the Machinery's Empire series. I read this book. I was reading it with a bunch of friends, and I was like, oh my God, I love this book. It's not a 5-star read because it's not perfect. It's actually quite jarring at times, but I love, like I said, the world building. I love General Jadao. I love Cheris. I love the world. I'm a world building focused reader sometimes. I don't even know if that's a word that exists in our community. I know we have plot driven and character driven. I'm world building driven most of the time. And the audacity of this author to introduce 20 to 30 new words in the first chapter and just be like, no, there are no context clues for you. You have to swim on your own. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Now I know that's not for everyone, and I think there are parts of the story that are great despite that aggressive world building. I think the characters are great. I think the plot is really intriguing. So I made that world building video so that you don't have to do what I did and piece it together. You can just enjoy the story because the story is really cool too. And yeah, that's why it's number 5. And also, as I say in every video, these covers are so colorful. Why can't more sci-fi books be this colorful? So yeah. Number 4 is The Deep by Rivers Solomon. This is such a shiny cover, which does not work with a ring lamp, but I love it in real life. This is a novella by one of my favorite sci-fi authors. They have also written An Unkindness of Ghosts, which I've read, I want to say early 2019. And this is the story of, I think her name's Yetu? Yes, Yetu, and she's a Wajinru, which is kind of a mermaid-like species. Now, I say that, and you'll think, well, why is this in a sci-fi video? I think this is sci-fi. The way that the world is described is very sci-fi oriented. They're described more as the creature, like eels, like how they communicate is very synonymous with how electric eels communicate. I learned that while putting together my Science Behind the Magic on electrical powers. And It's about Yatu, who is the holder of memories for her people. Her people are descendants of unborn babies that were thrown off of slave ships. And so those traumatic memories are held by one individual, Yetu, which means she doesn't really get to have a life of her own. And one day when she does the remembrances, gives her memories to her people, she kind of runs away. And it's about her internal journey. It's about this community, and I really, really liked it. I thought they packed such a big punch in just this many pages. It was phenomenal. I do not buy novella copies very often, and I bought the hardback of this one because it was a stunning tale. Number 3, I'm going to talk about an absolutely remarkable thing, the first book in the Carl's duology, which I have a review for that series. I do also like the sequel, but the first book was such a fun surprise. I listened to it as an audiobook one day on my friend Audrey's recommendation because I needed an audiobook, and boy, were they so right. It was so fun. Now, this is a very light social sci-fi, so I think you're more looking at the impact of technology on people's social life and their individual life with the technology. So you follow April May, who one day films a viral video about these Carls, which are these statues that just showed up around the world one night. And it's mostly about how her life changes by becoming that viral, by having that situation on social media, her interactions with her own friends. There is this mystery with the Carls that is explored, but it's not, that's kind of more like the B plot. The A plot is really following April May as she tells her story. This is a book that knows it's a book, telling you about all the things she did wrong, all the things that have happened, her side of the story. And I was completely captivated, and I loved it. And normally it's hard for me to make time for an audiobook, and I was scheduling more and more walks just to finish it because I was just so enthralled and immersed in this story. So that's why it's on this list. Even though it is a softer sci-fi, just know that going in, it's really not about the Carls and the mystery behind this potential alien first encounter moment. It's really not about that. It's really about one's like interaction with technology and like the social spaces that form from that. Number 2 is a memory called Empire by Arkady Martine, a book I need to reread very soon because I want to reread it before the sequel comes out next year because I love it that much. This is another story that's 4 stars, but I love it so much. So, like I said, I'm just really harsh on my sci-fi reads. I love this story. This is a story about an ambassador who goes to this empire that I cannot pronounce. It has X's in it, and whenever X's are in words, my brain automatically goes, ah. But she goes to this empire, and she has this kind of secret with her. Her little satellite region that is separate from the empires has this technology that the empire does not, and this technology allows memories to be passed down to people so that people basically literally have the memories of their ancestors to guide them. It's a part of a technology in their brain. And so she's trying to keep that secret safe, but also figure out what happened to her predecessor. So there's this whole intrigue, political thing going with this ambassador to this controlling empire place. But there's also just this discussion about assimilation and memory and how to both love a culture that's not your own and be true to your own culture. It was thematically very rich, and I loved the characters, and I thought the plot was great. It was a little slow paced, which is probably why it wasn't a complete 5-star, but like, it's been 9 months and I still think about it. So it could not be lower on the list than this. And number 1, probably maybe not surprising to any of you at home, is Exhalation by Ted Chiang. This I have a review for. I thought about not putting this on the list because I'm going to have a whole video on short story collections. But this is like the best sci-fi I've read all year, so it couldn't not be on this list. These are short story collections by Ted Chiang. I guess if I had to pick my favorite in here, it's probably The Truth of Fact, The Truth of Feeling. There's also The Life Cycle of Software Objects. They're just a lot of stories about predestination, about fatalism. It's really great. I highly recommend checking my review. I'm a little more articulate there. I just love these stories. I can't wait to reread them. They are perfect for me in terms of when I want philosophical science fiction. So I want those thinky stories, but Ted Chiang adds great characters. So I feel like the classics like Asimov are really good at thinky detective stories, but for me, they fall flat with characters. Whereas with Ted Chiang, I am invested in the characters and the plot and their lives. But also I really love the scientific questions that he's asking and the philosophizing he does. It's just, it's so good for me in terms of like when I want that type of science fiction. So those were my top 10 science fiction reads of 2020. I love them all so much. I discovered so many great reads in science fiction this year. I am always happy to keep expanding my knowledge in that genre because it's one I didn't really start reading till 4 or 5 years ago. So just so much discovery. If you have a favorite from 2020, please tell me in the description so I can start compiling a huge list of things that I need to read in 2021. Otherwise, if you just want me to know you're here, you can leave kind of what you consider a sci-fi emoji. I'll take anything. Or you can just say hi or use a smiley on your keyboard. It does not matter. Just if you want me to know you're here, that's all great with me. Otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.